On this day in 1993, 32 years ago, Prince became a glyph. I'm Michael Douglas. Welcome to this edition of Dr. Pundit, where we talk about music, not medicine. And on this edition of the show, I'd like to talk about a time definitely Gen Xers like me can remember, because we were in our early 20s at the time. And Prince, on June 7th, 1993, 32 years ago, basically opted to change his stage name to a completely unpronounceable symbol. And that symbol, known as the love symbol by fans, was often described as the artist formerly known as Prince, or TAFCAP. Yes, TAFCAP. That's what I would call it. But I saw that written in pieces at the time as well. So, take that for what it's worth. Now, this wasn't some pretentious spur-of-the-moment decision for Prince. Rather, it was really intentional, and it reflected an ongoing battle between Prince and his label at the time. Now, a lot has been written on this, and it's very important. Looking at this from hindsight, it's easy to see why he made this decision. Now, back in 1977, Prince signed on with Warner Brothers and launched, of course, a legendary career. And back then, the label gave him almost total creative control, knowing that what he would come up with resonate with audiences. So their hunches were right, of course. And that's precisely what happened. The label funded his more experimental ventures, which resulted in both sides of the contract just making a pretty penny. Fast forward to 15 years later, 1992, a rift began between the artist and the label, and Prince opted to extend his contract. The deal was simple. For every album that Prince produced that sold more than 5 million copies, he would take home $10 million. His previous effort before signing the new contract, Diamonds and Pearls, a hit album from 1991, did a fantastic job commercially. It seemed like everything would go swimmingly. But Warner Brothers wanted Prince to focus on new music. Prince, on the other hand, wanted to root through his unreleased work and breathe new life into it. And they didn't like his approach, and for the first time, their professional relationship with Prince, Warner Brothers, the label, really put their foot down. And Prince, which I think was a genius move, decided to make the whole thing as public as possible, doing what he probably would have totally blown out of the water if he was exposed to social media at the time. He wrote the word slave on his face and then suddenly changed his name to an unpronounceable glyph, G-L-Y-P-H, or symbol, and to a degree it was somewhat unmarketable, a combination of the male and female symbols with the arrow and the kind of the cross there. Now, Prince said it was an unpronounceable symbol whose meaning has not been identified. And that's what he said immediately after the name change. He would also go on to say, it's all about thinking in new ways, tuning into a new frequency, he would say. Now, naturally, this invented symbol doesn't have a keyboard button. I checked, and it doesn't. In order to promote Prince's new name, the label had to send out floppy disks at the time, remember those, with image files of the symbol to publications. And in 1999, Prince went into more detail about the name change in an interview with Larry King.
You would admit yourself an unusual personality.
Depends.
Well, let's say you're different.
As compared to what?
As compared to most people in, let's say, show business, you're an unusual person. Most people don't get famous with one name and then change it, right? Would you say? What's the story of that, by the way?
Well, I had searched deep within my heart and spirit, and I wanted to make a change and move to a new plateau in my life. And one of the ways in which I did that was to change my name. It sort of divorced me from the past and all the hang-ups that go along with it. I was, as it's been well chronicled, in deep dispute with my record label. And
which is Warner Brothers, right?
Yeah.
Which owns this network, I might add.
Oh, they do? We had some issues that were basically about ownership of the music and how often I was supposed to record and things like that. We got along otherwise. We just came to head in those types of
So there was no
situations.
clash over what you would record or what kind of music you were singing, etc.?
No.
None of that?
No creative issues whatsoever. And they were gracious enough to allow me very wide palette to, put colors onto.
But about the highest risk one would think someone who gets famous would take is to drop the name that got them famous.
Well, that was one of the things that I dealt with, is that I really searched deep within to find out the answer to whether fame was most important to me or my spiritual well-being, and I chose the latter.
A year later, Prince's contract with Warner Brothers would eventually expire, 2000, and he promptly went back to using the name Prince. And I remember people didn't know if he was going to be able to be the same artist, record the same material. He would go on these award shows and on TV, would have the word slave written. Again, I think it's a social media, pre-social media outreach, and people knew exactly what he was talking about, which was sheer genius. And of course, the decades after the year 2000, he died, 16 years later, his output wasn't as strong to the casual fan as it was with his more hardcore fans, but still he was producing great music in the first decade of the 21st century. And I just think that this day is really important in the overall history of music, certainly in the canon of Prince and his continued evolution in music, making music until he eventually passed away, unfortunately, in 2016. I'm Michael Douglas, and if you like what you see here on Dr. Pundit, please don't hesitate to like and subscribe. And as the late great Barry White always used to say, let the music play, and I'll see you on the next episode.